My name is Kendra, and I was born in Louisville, Colorado. But throughout my life, I've lived in a lot of different places, and I have lived overseas for a bit as well. And my passion is cross cultural communication. I loved growing up in Louisville. It was a fantastic place to live. There's an open space in Louisville, and that's my home backed up into that. So I would spend a lot of time playing in the field, playing in the neighborhood. And in high school, I started coming to Longmont a lot because there was a theater group that I joined in Longmont. So my friends were in Longmont, and I would come here a lot. My first job was in Longmont. I actually worked at Crackpots. It's on Main Street. I worked there, and that was my first job. So in my early 20s, I moved around the US a lot. I I worked in different places. I lived with different people, and for several years, I moved basically every like 8 months, and it was really fun, but it started to wear on me, and there was this one strange time I had been living in California, and I was actually moving back to Colorado for a little bit. And I went to Disneyland, and the person at the gate wanted to ask me, like a poll. And she asked, "Where do you come? Where are you coming from?" And my mind went blank because at that point, like my car had been the most home for me because that was the only thing that had stayed the same. And I think I said something like, I think I said Colorado, but that was kind of a weird moment of I have no home, and that was a little disturbing. I just not really having anywhere that I really wanted to put down roots, and it was very disorienting. I think I was kind of looking for home because even though I think Colorado is beautiful and I have so many wonderful people here, it just didn't really feel like home. And I even remember being a little kid and like looking at the mountains and going, "What's past that? I want to know what maybe past that is where home is." And so I actually worked at Walt Disney World for a while, and they have a big international program. And for some reason, the time I was there, there were all these students from China. And I had never met anyone from China before. And I made so many Chinese friends, and I got interested in the language. And so after that, for many years, I was learning Chinese. And I kind of got to this point where I was still feeling lost in the US. And uh, the sister of a childhood friend was living in China and contacted me and said, "Would you like to come live in China and help take care of our kids?" So in 2015, I bought a one-way ticket to China and got on an airplane to a place. I had visited China, but I was going to a different place I had never been to before for I didn't know how long. When I was in China, I didn't expect this. I only planned to be in China for maybe 2 years. I had committed to be with this family for a certain amount of time. And my original plan was to actually go to a different city and maybe go to a language school. And why a different city, I'm not really sure. Travel, different. That's what I had been doing. When I first arrived in China, I had been learning Chinese for several years, but only like once a week in a classroom. I had never been on the streets and like, I need to use this. And I was really touched by how willing people were to take care of me. There was this one time where I didn't, I'm from Colorado, we drive everywhere. I had never taken public transportation before I went to China. So I had a bus card and my bus card ran out of money and I didn't understand like what was going on. And someone paid for my bus fare, just like a stranger was like, "No, you sit down, I'll pay for this." And then this girl, I was going somewhere I had never gone before, and I wasn't sure where the bus station was, so I was kinda asking, and she walked me to the bus station waited for the bus to come and asked the driver if he was going to the place I needed to go. And that was so incredibly touching to me that these strangers would be willing to do that for this, awkward person who can't even really speak very well. My feeling at home in China is a little complicated because Chinese culture is more monocultural. The way their government is set up, it's very difficult to get a green card or to stay long term. And so it was kind of an odd place to suddenly feel very, very at home. And I think it's because the people were so welcoming to me. I had never wanted to stay in a place very long before. And so that had been wearing on me a little bit. I love traveling, but always meeting new people, always finding a new job. And so there was this group, this Bible study I was a part of, and we would always do an activity after our study. And the leader said, "We're going to plant a tree." And he had bought a tree, and we went out into the garden and we planted this tree. And like the next day, I went back and I started crying because I was like, the tree gets to stay here. Can't I? I want to stay here too. And so because I realized I loved the place I was at. I was in Guangzhou, is called the City of Flowers. And there's beautiful flowers every day of the year. I had this amazing community, and I realized I just wanted to stay there. So I called my parents and I said, "So I kind of want to just stay here. There's actually a language school here I want to go to, and I don't know when I want to come back." And my parents said, "We knew that when you left. Like, we knew you probably wouldn't be coming back. Did you not know that?" I came back in the summer of 2019 because a family member was getting married and I wanted to visit some people in the States. But I started having nightmares about being stuck in America. I was so happy in China. And I remember a couple weeks before my flight, I was consistently like having these nightmares of being stuck in America, and I couldn't go back to China, and I would wake up in a cold sweat and being really upset. I felt so comfortable in China, and I knew what I was having was a very special experience because where I was living was a really special community. And I remember calling my dad once and saying, like, can I keep doing this? Like, I'm kind of using my savings just to kind of hang out here and learn the language. And I feel like Cinderella at the ball, and it's really fun. Can Cinderella stay at the ball? Like, is it midnight yet? And he's like, "You stay at the ball as long as you can." And I did have to leave China. I had to leave because of COVID. I went and I looked at the tree again, and it's like, oh, this tree like represents my spirit in this little garden area, this tree and the roots of like, my roots are so shallow because I've never been in a place and like invested deeply in people. And a large part of wanting to be there was the children. I nannied them for a little bit, but then they just became my neighbors because I moved into the apartment next door. And I realized children grow so fast and time goes by so fast. I want to be here for that. And that is like the roots for me of like, I want to invest in these people's lives for a very long time. And I had never wanted that before. I came back to the United States in June of 2020. I had to come back to the States, and then I couldn't go back. And I kind of had the hope that I would be able to go back to China by Christmas. When I left everyone, we were all saying, "See you at Christmas." And obviously that did not happen. That was a couple years ago at this point. And so I was kind of living my nightmare in a way. And it was very hard at the beginning. I had a lot of weird reverse culture shock. People have asked me, when you went to China, did you have culture shock? A little bit. I had more culture shock coming back. And that's because, COVID was such an intense situation, and the way people in China were dealing with it was different than the way people in the USA were dealing with it. On top of all suddenly I have English everywhere all the time. But I can't necessarily say that I wish it had never happened. I wish COVID had never happened, but me having to come back was a very good thing, because I had to readdress all those things about what is home, what are roots, who are my people. And there have been some specific people in my family in Longmont, because while I was around traveling everywhere, my family moved from Louisville to Longmont. So returning to the States meant coming to Longmont. And these people have helped me find that I can feel at home anywhere, even in a place that isn't necessarily where I want it to be. And that's been very good. I feel like now wherever I go, I have the tools to create community and to be at home. One of the most impactful things that happened to me with this idea of impermanence is when my friend was trying to adopt her foster son. And because of the way and especially in their unique situation, every adoption is unique. There was a very, very high chance it would not happen. And my friend, she said, I'm afraid to pray to have this child, because what if it doesn't happen? And being around this family that had experience with fostering, they said, for the child's benefit, this was a unique situation in that they wanted to adopt the child. Very often, a foster child moves along to someone else. And there's this thing inside of us that wants to protect us from pain. And so something they tell foster parents is, no, you need to love this child as if this child is going to be here forever, knowing that this child is not going to be here forever and you will be hurt. But it's best for the child to go all in. What I have taken from that is that during all of my time traveling, probably why I got so worn down is because I had that. I wouldn't go out of my way a lot to make new friends or to get involved with organizations. And it was because I would be leaving, and I knew I would be leaving. And it's really hard for me to keep in touch with people who are far away. And I have changed my attitude towards that. And I've decided wherever I am, I'm going all in with my relationships, with what I want to do, whether I'm here for, a week or several years. I need to put down roots knowing they will be pulled out, because that's what's best for everyone. And then I've also really enjoyed kind of having adventures in Longmont, because I realized doing new, exciting things feeds my soul, and I need to do that wherever I am. So I will go and hang out at Roosevelt Park. I love the Rose Garden. And I discovered these really cool statues that the Art Society has put up around that park that are so fun and whimsical, and I didn't know they were there. And sometimes I'll go to a new restaurant because it's something different and the food is different. And so having mini adventures helps feed my soul when I can't go on a big adventure. And I decided that there were things that I could do here I could not do there. So it took a bit, but I finally decided I wanted to pursue interpretation. So I am studying at the Community College of Aurora. They have an interpretation program, and that has been really helpful for me because it gives me a goal it's something I can do here, but it's pushing me towards that other direction that I really, really want to go. Cross-cultural communication is my passion, and I didn't have the words to express that for a very long time. I just knew, like when I was working at Disney World, I had a notebook, and every person I would meet that was from a different country, I'd be like, tell me everything. Write how to say hello in your language. And I have this notebook just full of different languages and different signatures of all these people that I met. And then I've noticed you don't actually have to go far away to have cross-cultural communication. And so now I'm looking for who are the people they're here in our community, and not just people who are immigrants or who come from a different cultural background, but every place in the US has slight differences. Texas is very different than California. And so I like the idea of what are the things we can connect about? What are the differences? What are the values of this community that might be kind of different from this one? And how do they interact? And so I just like meeting lots of different people and hearing stories. There's this idea of being a bridge between cultures. I think one of the Chinese language resources I've even looked into is called the Yellow Bridge. And that kind of put it in my mind of, being a bridge, because I know a little bit about this and a little bit about that. And as a younger person, I think I was a little bit arrogant about that, of like, oh yeah, I totally know this about Chinese culture. When I was in China, I was struck actually by how much more they know about American culture than I knew about Chinese culture or Korean culture. I had a lot of Korean classmates. And so I don't necessarily think of myself as a bridge, but I could be a starting point. I've realized I actually don't know as much about American culture. I can't be an authority on that because I have a very limited experience. And sure, I can tell someone who's never been to China a very small slice of what I, as a white American, experienced in China. And I don't necessarily see that as a bridge, but I see it as a starting point of people asking questions or finding out a little thing and going, that's interesting. The next time I meet someone from that culture, I'm going to ask them about that. Part of the reason I really loved traveling around is I met so many different people. I've met people who have never moved from their town and never even gone out of state on vacation. And, in some ways I admire that, but that's not me. And so I think I've had to define what home is for me and what is the stable things in my life. And right now, a lot of that is people. I would, at this point, I feel like I can be at home anywhere. And particularly right now, being in Longmont, I've decided to make connections and make wherever I am kind of home.